Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world.
It is really good to be back today.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. Today, we are doing something a little different. Usually, we take a stack of articles, maybe a geopolitical crisis or some kind of tech breakdown. But today, we are doing a special long-form deep dive into a piece of fiction.
Which is a fun change of pace.
It is, but, and this is really big, but we aren't here to do a book club review. We aren't checking for plot holes or analyzing character romances.
Right, precisely. We are not looking at plot points just for the sake of entertainment, and we certainly aren't here to critique the prose style. What we are doing is treating the novel Golden Sun by Pierce Brown as a structural case study.
Exactly. We're basically treating the book as a simulation of elite competition within a very rigid biological caste hierarchy.
And just to be absolutely clear before we begin, this is not a review.
No.
This is not advocacy
Yeah.
for the systems we're describing, which are, frankly, incredibly brutal.
Yeah, deeply brutal.
And this is not prescriptive. We are simply here to map the mechanics of a fictional society to understand how power, incentive, and belief all intersect.
So let's kind of set the stage for you. If you're coming into this cold, or, if you missed our breakdown of the prior stage, which was Red Rising, we really need to orient you. Because we aren't in a democracy here. We aren't even in a dictatorship in the modern sense.
Yeah.
So give us the basic architecture of what they call the society.
Right, so we are looking at a color-coded interstellar caste system that has been genetically cemented. This isn't just class based on money. It is biological destiny. At the very top, you have the Golds. They are genetically modified superhumans.
They're huge, right?
Oh, massive. They are bigger, faster, stronger, and significantly smarter than any baseline human. They are the absolute ruling class.
They're essentially Nietzschean Übermensch brought to life. I mean, they look like statues, they live for centuries, and they are just incredibly hard to kill.
Correct. And then below them, the pyramid widens out. You have blues, who are hardwired for technology and navigation. They literally interface with starships using digital tattoos. You have grays, who are the police and military infantry, bred specifically for obedience.
And the Obsidians.
Yes, the Obsidians. They are the monstrous shock troops bred for pure violence and deliberately kept in a primitive mythological state. All the way down to the Reds, who are the manual laborers living deep in the bowels of planets, mining the fuel that keeps the whole empire running.
And in the previous stage of this analysis, we looked at the Institute. That was basically a Lord of the Flies scenario, a controlled valley on Mars where teenage goals fought for dominance to earn their scars.
Yeah, but that was just the nursery. The design and the training mechanisms of the hierarchy were established there, but it was essentially a sandbox. In Golden Sun, the scope absolutely explodes.
Right, they leave the valley.
We are no longer in a valley. We start at the academy and then move into the broader solar system. These elites have graduated from fighting for a little badge or a star to engaging in full-scale competition for real power.
Real stakes.
Exactly. We're talking fleets, planetary governance, and absolute political legitimacy.
It's basically the difference between, a flight simulator and being handed the keys to a nuclear arsenal.
That's a great way to put it. And to understand how these people operate, how they sleep at night, you have to understand their foundational philosophy. It's summed up perfectly by the arch-governor of Mars, Nero O. Augustus. His core motto is Hic sunt leones.
Here be lions.
Yes, here be lions. And it's not just a cool catchphrase to slap on a banner. It is a comprehensive worldview. It dictates that the universe is inherently hostile, chaotic, and entropic. The fundamental belief is that only the strong, specifically the Golds, can impose order on that chaos.
If they stop being lions.
The system collapses. If they stop being the apex predators, humanity goes extinct.
Which, let's be honest, is a very convenient thing to believe when you happen to be the lion. It's like saying, I have to eat you, otherwise the universe falls apart.
It's the ultimate justification for tyranny. It frames total oppression as a necessary survival strategy. And this brings us to the first major pillar of our analysis today, which is the incentive architecture.
Let's unpack that, because when we first meet Darrow, the protagonist, at the start of this stage, he's at the academy, he's training to be a fleet commander, but the vibe there isn't study hard and get good grades. It's entirely predatory.
The system is designed from the ground up to be predatory. The currency here isn't just money. They have wealth, obviously. But the real currency is status, reputation, and survival.
It feels incredibly transactional. There's a moment early on where Darrow isn't just trying to win a battle simulation. His actual goal is to win a fleet. He's trying to secure a patron.
Because in the system, you cannot rise on merit alone. You need a contract. Gold families are constantly competing for status, and Nero Augustus literally buys Darrow's contract. It is explicitly stated as a financial transaction. Later, there is a scene where a politician named Pliny actually suggests selling Darrow to a rival house, the Bologna, just to settle some trade disputes.
So even the elite, the peerless scarred who survived the Institute, are essentially just assets.
They're liquid assets, and that liquidity creates a hyper-competitive environment. If your value drops, say you lose a battle or you suffer a public humiliation, you aren't just fired or demoted, you are liquidated, often literally.
Which brings us to the Academy itself. It's described as a war game, but it's incredibly lethal. And there is one specific incident there that I think perfectly encapsulates the incentive architecture here, the battle against Carniso Bologna. Break that down for us.
So Carnus is a member of the Bologna family, who are the bitter rivals to Darrow's patron, Augustus. In the simulation, Carnus realizes he can't outmaneuver Darrow strategically. Darrow is simply too clever of a commander. So Carnus changes the currency of the game. He decides to use his own ship as a physical battering ram.
He rams Darrow's ship, which is insane in a training exercise.
He rams it, and in doing so, he deliberately sacrifices his own crew. And we aren't talking about a few pixels on a screen. In the reality of the book's universe, he condemns hundreds of real crew members to death just to secure a win in a simulation.
And the reaction from the proctors, the teachers watching this happen.
That is the absolute key data point. The text specifically mentions that the blood of 833 low colors doesn't count. It's treated as a clerical issue, a minor rounding error in the budget.
That is just chilling. 833 people died so a rich kid could win a school game.
Because it reveals the hidden curriculum of the Academy. The lesson isn't how to fly a ship. The lesson is how to spend lives. The system is explicitly designed to tolerate high inefficiency and the massive loss of human capital, the low colors, if it helps identify the apex predator among the golds. War is a mechanism for internal consolidation.
So the wastefulness is a feature. It's not a bug.
Precisely. If you are the sovereign or you are Nero Augustus, you don't care if Carnus wastes 800 units of labor to win. You care that he won. You are looking for the killer who is willing to make that trade without hesitating, because that is the exact person you want defending the hierarchy when a real rebellion happens.
And this game mentality, it bleeds right out of the school and into the real economy, doesn't it? We see this with the feud between House Augustus and House Bologna, the blood feud.
Yes. But look at the systemic outcome of that feud. It's not just two aristocratic families fighting at fancy dinner parties. The feud causes massive helium-3 shortages, it causes trade tariffs, it causes literal blockades of entire planets.
So personal vendettas become massive macroeconomic disruptions.
And the system completely allows it. In a functional modern state, the central government would step in and say, stop fighting, you're hurting the GDP. But here, the sovereign, Octavio Lune, deliberately allows the feud to fester.
Why? That seems totally counterintuitive. If she wants order to protect the human race, why let her two biggest vassals tear each other apart?
Because she maintains power, not by keeping the peace, but by managing chaos. If Augustus and Bologna are fighting each other, pouring all their resources into this vendetta, they aren't fighting her.
It's the illusion of stability.
It is managed instability. There is a critical scene where the sovereign essentially admits she plans to purge the Augustans at the gala. She's using the feud to weaken a rival. The escalating warfare and systemic instability are masked as tradition or strength or honor, but structurally it's a mechanism for centralizing her own control.
That's a terrifying way to run a solar system. It's like setting your own house on fire just to keep the living room warm.
It is highly effective right up until the fire gets out of control. And that brings us to our second section. We really need to map the actors, the narratives, and the institutional tools. Because we need to look at the specific people who keep this machine running. They represent different gears in the mechanism.
Let's start right at the top then. The sovereign, Octavia Lune.
She represents centralized authority and the maintenance of the hierarchy through pure terror. There is a chilling scene involving an oracle, which is a truth-telling scorpion creature, where she explicitly explains her philosophy to Darrow.
This is the backstory that haunts the whole series. What happened on the Moonray?
Right. 60 years prior, the Moonray rebelled against gold rule. They wanted better working conditions, perhaps independence. Octavia didn't just send in the police. She didn't just arrest the leaders or crush the army. She initiated the Ash Lord Protocol. She burned the entire moon from orbit.
Scorched earth, quite literally.
Scorched moon. 50 million people. Gone.
How do you justify that to yourself? How does the person press that button, wipe out 50 million people, and then just go eat breakfast?
You have to listen to her justification. She calls humans entitled locusts. She posits that without her iron grip, without the absolute fear of another Rhea hanging over everyone, humanity would devour itself through resource wars and greed. She uses the memory of chaos, the existential fear of extinction, to justify the presence of absolute tyranny.
I am the monster that keeps the other monsters away.
Exactly. She believes she's the dam holding back the flood. And to maintain that dam, she needs enablers. Which brings us to Pliny.
Pliny is the guy everyone just loves to hate in this book. He's the soft power guy. He's a Politico.
He is the ultimate enabler. He doesn't fight with a razor. He fights with narratives. We see him dealing with the Sons of Ares terrorist threat. The Sons are setting off bombs, trying to disrupt the society. But Pliny isn't trying to solve the root causes of the rebellion. He's trying to spin it.
There's that detail about the psychologists.
Yes, the yellow psychologist. He puts them on the public media feeds to analyze the terrorists. But they don't talk about the terrorists' actual grievances. They don't mention slavery or starvation. They frame them as sexually traumatized lunatics. They completely pathologize the dissent.
So they turn political freedom fighters into crazy people in the public eye.
It creates a feedback loop. Pliny tries to blame the terrorism on political rivals, specifically the Bologna. He sees a bomb that kills innocent people, and his first thought is, how can I use this to get a better trade deal?
It just shows how the system can't actually solve problems. It can only exploit them.
And then we have the opportunist, the jackal, Adrius Augustus.
The jackal is something else entirely. He's Nero's son, but he feels fundamentally different from the other Golds.
He is the pure product of the system's incentives, but stripped entirely of the moral mask. The other Golds constantly talk about honor, tradition, the compact. The jackal doesn't care about any of that. He uses criminal syndicates. He uses dirty, underhanded tactics. He buys people. He bribes judges.
He's the guy who realizes that if the ultimate goal is just to win at all costs, why bother following the rules of honor?
And that ruthlessness leads to the scene of patricide later in the narrative. The jackal kills his own father, Nero.
Evil, be thou my good.
That moment represents the system eating itself. The unchecked ambition that the system cultivates eventually strips away the last pretenses of family or tradition. The jackal is the system's natural endgame, pure power acquisition with zero moral restraint.
And on the other side of that coin, we have the military elite, the Bologna family, specifically Carnus.
The hammer. For them, reputation is literal currency. The Bologna are Olympic knights. They use their physical prowess to bully political concessions out of their rivals. The honor of dueling isn't about personal satisfaction. It's an institutional tool for political liquidation. If you disagree with me in the Senate, I challenge you to a duel and I legally kill you.
It creates a closed loop where might literally makes right, and it's all perfectly legal.
Which brings us to the core structural tension of the novel, Darrow.
Darrow is so interesting because he's an anomaly in the system. He's a low-caste manual laborer who has been surgically carved to look and act like a Gold. He's a mole.
He is the insider and the insurgent simultaneously. His dual identity illustrates the structural tension perfectly. As a peerless Scard, an insider, he has to succeed in this brutal system. But as a red helldiver and insurgent, his ultimate goal is to completely destroy it.
And that conflict is constant. He has genuine friends in the Gold caste, Mustang, Severo, even Roke. His personal loyalty to them constantly clashes with his systemic need to destroy their entire class.
We see this deeply in his internal monologue regarding the Iron Rain.
The Iron Rain, that's the massive planetary assault on Mars.
Yes. Darrow is commanding troops. He realizes he has to spend lives to maintain his cover. He has to send men to die just to prove he is a competent, ruthless Gold commander. Individual morality is completely subordinated to power preservation.
He has to order men to their deaths to prove he's a good leader, so that one day he can get enough power to stop people from ordering men to their deaths. That is a massive psychological toll.
It is profound moral subordination. To change the system, he has to become the absolute best at being the system. He has to become the arch-governor's heir. He wears the mask so tightly it starts to permanently stick to his face.
But there is one moment where he breaks character. Or rather, he breaks the foundational rules of the system, the taking of the Pax.
This is the most critical structural moment in the text. If you want to understand the thesis of the book, you have to look at this scene.
Set the scene for us.
Darrow has captured a massive battleship, the Vanguard, which he immediately renames the Pax. Now, usually a gold commander would vent the ship, literally open the airlocks and kill the crew to eliminate resistance, or they would just treat the surviving crew as furniture.
Because the standard operating procedure is vertical. Golds command, blues fly, obsidians fight.
Exactly. But Darrow disrupts this completely. He physically descends into the bowels of the ship. He goes down to the bridge, to the engine rooms. He gets on the comms, and he tells the low colors, the blues and the obsidians. He says, "You are my salvation."
That line always gets me. You are my salvation. He actually gives them agency.
He offers them a real choice. He says, "Join me and live." He aligns their incentives with his own. He tells them, "If I die, you die. If I win, we all live."
And he tells them to subdue their gold masters on the ship.
That is the ultimate heresy. He breaks the caste labor barriers. He introduces meritocracy to a rigid caste system. He doesn't just win a tactical battle, he breaks the entire paradigm of command. He shifts the structure from vertical coercion to horizontal cooperation.
And it works. The crew fights for him with a fanaticism that the other golds just do not understand.
Because he gave them ownership. Look at Ragnar, the Obsidian. Ragnar is a literal monster of a man, bred only to kill. He looks at Darrow and calls him a god. Not because Darrow is strong, Karnas is strong, but because Darrow gave him a choice.
I live for you because you let me live.
It highlights that the system's greatest weakness is its failure to utilize the agency of the lower castes. The Golds see the low colors as tools. Darrow sees them as partners. That is an incredible asymmetric advantage.
So if the system is so inefficient, so brutal, and so prone to internal civil war, why does it survive? Why hasn't it collapsed under its own weight?
Structural persistence. This brings us back to Nero Augustus. He gives a monologue justifying gold rule that is absolutely essential to understanding their mindset.
The entitled Locust speech again.
Yes. He argues that humanity almost destroyed Earth through resource hoarding, capitalism, and democracy. He views the pre-color world as a suicide pact. In his mind, gold imposed order to save the species from itself.
It's the immune system trap.
Exactly. The elites genuinely believe they are the immune system of humanity. And this belief makes them incredibly resilient against reform. Because if you truly believe that you are the only thing standing between survival and extinction, you view any dissent not as a difference of political opinion, but as an existential threat to the species.
So they aren't just protecting their wealth and their estates. They think they're protecting the human race.
That conviction is incredibly powerful. It allows them to commit absolute atrocities with a clear conscience. And we see the ultimate immune response in the character of Roke.
Roke breaks my heart. He's the poet, the nice guy of the group. He really loves Darrow.
He is the gentle side of gold culture. But analyze his betrayal. Why does he turn on Darrow?
Because he finds out Darrow is a red.
Right. It's not because Darrow was a bad friend. It's not because Darrow failed him strategically on the battlefield. It is purely categorical. To Roke, the hierarchy is sacred. He literally says gold will never wane. He cannot conceive of a world where the hierarchy doesn't exist. Preserving the color separation is more important to him than his deep friendship with Darrow.
It proves that even the good golds are structurally incapable of accepting equality.
Correct. The hierarchy persists because elite competition is contained within a closed system. It completely prevents low colors from accessing any decision-making power. And even when there is internal chaos, like the massive civil war happening in the book, it actually strengthens the hierarchy in a dark, Darwinian sense.
How does a civil war strengthen them?
By eliminating the weaker elites, it consolidates power among the strong, the Hicksont Leonis crowd. The system basically cleanses itself of weakness through blood, ensuring that only the most ruthless predators remain in charge.
So war isn't a failure of the system at all.
No. War is a feature. It is exactly how power is redistributed among the elites. The Iron Rain on Mars isn't a revolution, it's just a reshuffling of the deck chairs at the top of the pyramid.
Let's talk about that redistribution, because it seems like the loyalty in this world is incredibly flimsy. We need to integrate this naturally into the broader dynamics.
Transactional loyalty is everything here. Look at the Politico Pliny again, or the Greys the Lurchers. Loyalty is bought with contracts, or bought with fear. There is absolutely no patriotism here. There is no for king and country. It is purely for patron and paycheck.
Which makes the system so volatile. If someone just offers a better contract,
You switch sides. Immediately. We see this with the elite families constantly betraying one another. The Bologna, the Augustus, the Loon dynamics perfectly mirror historical aristocratic struggles. Think of the War of the Roses. Family lineage determines access to resources, and alliances just shift with the wind.
And to keep it all holding together, they have these massive rituals, the gala, the dueling.
Legitimacy signaling. Why do they duel with razors instead of just shooting each other with blasters?
Yeah.
Because it proves they're physically superior. It validates their right to rule through physical dominance. If I can cut you down face to face, I deserve to lead you.
It's highly performative.
All power is, to some degree.
Correct.
But here the performance is lethal and institutionalized.
I want to zoom out a bit. We've been talking about space battles and razor fights. But there are some very real-world dynamics mirrored here that we need to connect back to.
Absolutely. Look at the elite training pipelines. The academy is essentially a hyper-violent version of Sandhurst or West Point or perhaps Eton. It is an institution designed specifically to insulate future leaders from the general populace and forge an unbreakable shared class identity.
They go to school together, they fight together, they rule together. It's an enclosed bubble.
Then there is the military-industrial consolidation, the character Quicksilver, Regulus Ag's son. He owns the mines, he owns the contracts.
He's the richest man in the solar system, right?
Go far. He represents the total merging of state power and economic monopoly. The state needs his money to build fleets, and he needs the state's protection to keep the labor force enslaved. It creates a complex where corporate interests and military expansion are entirely indistinguishable.
And the dynastic politics. I mean, we see this in our own world. Families that have been entrenched in power for generations.
Access to capital, in this case fleets and helium-3, is hereditary. The crisis in the book is partly about what happens when that hereditary transfer is violently interrupted by someone like Darrow.
Which brings us to the core of this deep dive, the crisis in perception.
We titled the show this for a reason.
So explicitly, what is the crisis in perception in this specific case?
The misperception, both for the characters in the world and often for the reader initially, is that the conflict is good guys versus bad guys.
Right. Augustus and Darrow versus the Bologna and the Sovereign. We naturally want the Lions of Mars to win.
We root for Augustus to beat Bologna because we follow Darrow. But systems-level analysis corrects this. The true crisis is believing that swapping one gold for another, gold changes the outcome.
Because if Augustus wins, does the life of a red miner actually change?
Not one bit. Whether Augustus rules Mars or Bologna rules Mars, the red miner still dies in the deep mines. The game is only for the golds. It's a closed loop.
So focusing on individual villains like the Jackal or Carnus actually obscures the real problem.
It completely obscures the deeper structural layer of elite self-reproduction. The system is perfectly designed to reproduce golds and keep them in power. As long as you focus your energy on which gold is in charge, you are missing the architecture entirely.
And Darrow's real victory isn't killing Carnus.
No, his only real victory is on the Pax. It is breaking the labor stratification. Reframing visibility shows us that the real crisis in perception is the deeply held belief that order requires hierarchy.
Nero's speech.
Yes, the Golds truly believe that chaos is the only possible alternative to their rule. They cannot perceive a third option. They are blind to liberty or horizontal cooperation. That inability to see a third option is their crisis.
And Darrow is trying to force them to see it.
Or destroy them if they refuse to look.
It's a heavy takeaway. You have this incredibly high-functioning system, ships flying, entire planets terraformed,
Right.
but it is entirely morally bankrupt.
And it demonstrates how incredibly difficult it is to dismantle a system when you are forced to use its own tools to survive it. Darrow has to be a gold to destroy gold. That paradox is the engine of the entire story.
You know, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, that Hic Sunt Leonis philosophy. Here be lions. It sounds so cool, right? It's the kind of thing you put on a t-shirt. But let's really dig into what that does to a person's psychology over centuries.
It is a profound form of self-mythology. If you define yourself as a lion, you are inherently defining everyone else as sheep or prey. It strips the humanity from the other caste before you even walk into the room.
And it perfectly justifies the brutality. If I'm a lion, I have to eat the sheep. It's not a moral choice. It's biology.
Exactly. It naturalizes what is actually a political construct. Nero Augustus isn't a biological predator in the sense that he must eat reds to metabolize calories and survive. He chooses to exploit them for power. But by adopting this lion philosophy, he completely absolves himself of moral responsibility. He just says, it is the way of the universe.
It's like when people say, well, it's a dog-eat-dog world. Usually the person saying that is the one doing all the eating.
Precisely. And in Golden Sun, this philosophy is highly institutionalized. Look at the Board of Quality Control. Look at the Academy. They are designed structurally to strip away empathy.
Let's talk about the Academy in more detail. Actually, we kind of glossed over it, but the specifics are just wild. Darrow is there for weeks, months, fighting this massive simulated war.
And notice who he is fighting. He is fighting his peers. The system deliberately turns peer connection into peer competition. In a healthy educational environment, you build networks of support. In the Academy, you build lists of enemies.
There's that brutal scene where Karnas and the Bellona cornered Darrow in the garden. It's not enough that they beat him in the game. They have to physically humiliate him.
That is a reputation currency we discussed. Cassius Bellona was humiliated by Darrow back at the Institute. So the Bellona family cannot rest until that debt is publicly paid. The ledger must be balanced in blood.
It sounds exhausting. Imagine living your entire life where every slight, every insult has to be answered with a deadly duel or a fleet maneuver.
It creates a society that is hyper-reactive.
Wow.
And this is a massive systemic weakness. The sovereign knows this. She plays on this reactivity constantly. She knows that if she just pricks the Bellona pride, they will blindly lash out at Augustus. She uses their own honor code as a leash.
Pliny calls it out, doesn't he? He calls them entitled.
Pliny is a fascinating observer because he is an outsider on the inside. He lacks the peerless scar. He isn't a warrior. So he sees the total absurdity of the Hic sunt Leonis posturing. He sees it as terribly inefficient.
But Pliny is just as bad, structurally speaking.
He is worse, in some ways. The lion at least admits he is hunting you to your face. Pliny is the parasite. He feeds off the kills of others. He manipulates the data flows and the narratives.
The media manipulation aspect is so relevant to today, the way they handle the Sons of Ares attacks.
It is a masterclass in state propaganda. When the bombs go off, they don't show the suffering of the Reds to generate empathy. They show the heroism of the Golds providing aid.
Quicksilver donates 3% of his fortune.
Exactly. It immediately becomes a PR opportunity. Look how benevolent we are. It reframes the victim, the low colors, as the aggressor terrorists, and the oppressor Golds as the saviors.
It's gaslighting on a planetary scale.
And it works beautifully. Most of the citizens in the society buy it completely because the alternative, admitting that their entire grand way of life is built on brutal slavery, is simply too painful to confront.
This connects right back to the crisis in perception. The average Gold, let's say mid-tier Gold, who isn't plotting to overthrow the sovereign, honestly believes they are the good guy in the story.
Yes, they look at the Reds and think, these creatures are chaotic, dirty, dangerous. Thank goodness we are here to guide them. It is the old colonial white man's burden projected thousands of years into the future and color-coded.
And Darrow's very existence proves that entire lie wrong. That's why he's so exceptionally dangerous.
He is the living refutation of their genetic superiority. He is a Red who can beat them at their own elite game. If he is revealed, the entire ideological foundation of the society collapses overnight.
Which is exactly why he has to hide so deeply. Let's talk about the Iron Reign again.
The Iron Reign, an orbital insertion of millions of troops. In the narrative of the book, it is a grand spectacle. But structurally, what is it?
It's a meat grinder.
It is the ultimate expression of the war as internal consolidation point. Augustus needs to secure Mars. He needs to push back the Bellona. So he authorizes a maneuver that will reliably cost millions of lives.
He participates. He actually goes down in the rain.
Legitimacy signaling. He cannot just order it from a safe bunker. He must lead it. To maintain his status as a lion, he must be in the absolute front. This is a double-edged sword for these elites. They have immense, unfathomable privilege, but they are also required by their culture to expose themselves to immense physical risk.
Contrast that with our world. Our elites usually send other people's kids to fight their wars.
A very fair distinction. In the society, the ruling class is the warrior class. This gives them a certain terrifying moral authority over their subjects. They do not say, go die for me. They say, come die with me.
That's incredibly seductive.
It is. It is exactly why Darrow's followers love him so fiercely. He leads from the front. But Darrow does it for a fundamentally different reason than Augustus.
He does it because he actually values them.
He does it because he views them as equals. Augustus does it because he views himself as a god who must be seen by his worshippers in all his terrible glory.
It's a subtle difference, but it has a huge impact.
It entirely changes the texture of the loyalty. The loyalty to Augustus is based on awe and deep fear. The loyalty to Darrow is based on shared humanity.
I want to touch on the Jackal again. We called him the opportunist. But he feels like a modern corporate raider just dropped into the middle of a Roman epic.
That is a very apt analogy. The jackal represents the total commodification of everything. He doesn't care about the colors. He works with anyone, syndicates, corrupted judges, whoever gets the job done.
He's the guy who realizes the rules are entirely fake.
He sees the matrix, so to speak. He sees that honor is just an arbitrary rule set that limits his potential, so he discards it without a second thought.
And his father, Augustus, absolutely hates him for it.
Augustus hates him because the jackal exposes his hypocrisy. Augustus wants to believe he is a noble Roman ruler establishing order. The jackal acts like a ruthless, amoral capitalist. The jackal is the mirror that shows Augustus what he actually is underneath the poetry. A monster.
And so Augustus tries to reject him. He says, "You are not my son."
And that rejection triggers the final collapse of the family. The system, Augustus tries to purge the amoral element, the jackal. But the amoral element is faster, smarter, and completely unburdened by tradition. So the jackal wins.
It's a warning, isn't it? If you build a system strictly on power-seeking, eventually you will produce a jackal.
You will inevitably produce a sociopath who is better at power-seeking than you are, simply because he lacks your arbitrary moral constraints.
Let's pivot back to the oracle scene. Octavia, she's just so scary.
She is the living embodiment of the state. When she interrogates Darrow, she isn't just asking him questions. She is testing his conformity to the system.
She asks him about his deepest fears.
And notice what she admits during that exchange. She admits that her power is a figment of the imagination.
That was such a key line. So much of a ruler's reign is a figment of the people's imagination.
She knows the math. She knows that if the billions of low colors all stood up at once, the golds would be finished. The math simply doesn't work for the golds. There are far too few of them.
So she needs the figment. She needs the fear.
Hence, Rhea, she destroyed a moon not to win a military war. She had already won the war. She did it to create a monument to fear, a permanent, burning reminder in the sky.
Terrorism, state-sponsored terrorism on a cosmic scale.
By definition. And this is the crisis in perception again. The golds see Rhea as a sad necessity to maintain order. The structural analyst sees it as a glaring sign of the system's immense fragility. If you have to blow up an entire moon to keep people in line, your system is not actually stable.
It's incredibly brittle.
Extremely brittle. It requires a constant, unending escalation of force just to maintain the status quo.
Which is exactly why the Sons of Ares are such a massive threat. They're poking the brittle spots.
And Pliny's mistake, and frankly the sovereign's mistake, is assuming the Sons are just another political rival playing the same game. They treat Ares like a rival house. Oh, he just wants power.
They can't even imagine he wants liberty.
That variable is not in their equation. They project their own selfish motivations onto their enemy. They think, everyone wants to be a gold. They cannot conceive that someone might want to destroy the concept of gold entirely.
And that blind spot is exactly where Darrow operates.
It is his cloak. He hides right in the middle of their arrogance.
Let's talk about the taking of the packs again. I feel like we can go even deeper there. Darrow grabs the mic. He talks directly to the crew.
Think about the physical layout of the ship itself. The bridge is at the very top. The engine rooms, the tubes are at the very bottom. It is a literal vertical hierarchy wrought in metal.
And Darrow physically descends, doesn't he?
He walks down through the ship. He sees the millions of moving parts. He acknowledges the manual labor. This is something golds rarely, if ever, do. They see the ship as a singular object. My ship. Darrow sees it as a collection of exploited workers.
And when he addresses them, he uses the cold logic of the system against itself. He says, if I vent the ship, I die. If you fight for me, we live.
He brilliantly aligns their incentives. He creates a shared fate. In the standard model, the fate of the gold commander is decoupled from the fate of the obsidian grunt. The commander can escape in a drop pod. The grunt dies in the vacuum. Darrow links them. We survive together or we die together.
That is just incredibly powerful leadership.
It is the absolute only way to break a caste system. You have to dissolve the barriers of fate.
And the result is that fanaticism you mentioned earlier.
They literally rename the ship the Pax, the Peace.
Which is deeply ironic because it's a massive warship.
But for them, it represents a profound peace from the tyranny of their previous existence. They are fighting for something now, not just because of something.
And Ragnar. The obsidian stained. He's a terrifying monster in combat.
Mm-hmm.
But when Darrow gives him a razor,
Giving an obsidian a razor is a strict capital crime. It is utterly forbidden by the Compact.
it's like giving a slave a nuclear weapon in this context.
It symbolizes ultimate trust. The system says obsidians are too dangerous to ever be trusted with agency. Dara says, I trust you with my life. That radical act of trust completely shatters Ragnar's conditioning.
Ragnar asks, are you a god?
And Darrow says no, which makes him more of a god in Ragnar's eyes than the golden gods who enslaved him for centuries.
Because the false gods demand worship. The real leader offers partnership.
Precisely. And this terrifies the other golds. When they see the packs fighting, they don't see a standard enemy fleet. They see a virus.
A virus of freedom.
If that virus spreads, the hierarchy dissolves instantly. That is why the sovereign must destroy Augustus and Darrow. It's not just about the family feud anymore. It's about systemic containment.
Let's talk about Roke again for a second. We mentioned his betrayal as an immune response, but he's also the poet. He romanticizes the system constantly.
He illustrates the profound danger of aestheticizing power. Roke loves the idea of gold, the beauty, the philosophy, the music. He conveniently ignores the blood pooling in the basement.
He looks at the pyramids and completely ignores the slaves who built them.
He focuses on the poetry of the razor duel, not the sheer cruelty of it. Many people in the real world do this. They admire the order and grandeur of authoritarian regimes while completely ignoring the human cost.
Roke tells Darrow, I am a son of gold. You are a son of red.
He retreats into biological essentialism. When the complexity of the world becomes too much, when his best friend turns out to be his mortal enemy, he falls back on the simple, rigid categories of the system. It comforts him.
It's just easier to be a gold than to be Darrow's friend.
Because being Darrow's friend requires questioning his entire reality. Being a gold just requires following the orders he was born to follow. Roke chooses the path of least cognitive resistance.
That is incredibly tragic.
It is the tragedy of the good soldier. The person who is personally kind and gentle, but structurally complicit in massive atrocity because they simply cannot break with their institutional identity.
What about Mustang? Virginia Augustus. Is she the middle ground?
She represents the reformist illusion. She wants a nicer society. She wants the golds to be better, to be more benevolent shepherds.
But she's still a gold. She still wants to be the shepherd.
She struggles with it deeply. She sees the glaring flaws, but she benefits entirely from the structure. Darrow's radicalism scares her initially. She wants to renovate the house. Darrow wants to burn it down to the foundation.
That tension reform versus revolution is a huge part of the narrative engine moving forward.
And structural analysis usually suggests that reform in a system this rigid is functionally impossible. The incentives are just too strong. As long as Hic sunt leones is the foundational motto, a nice lion is still a lion.
You can't regulate the lion into being a vegetarian.
Exactly. You have to change the ecosystem entirely.
I want to spend a minute on the visual language of the book. The colors. It's so striking and visual.
The color coding serves as a constant, inescapable visual reinforcement of the hierarchy. You don't even have to ask someone's rank or look at a badge. You see it in their eyes, their hair, their sigils. It completely eliminates social mobility because you cannot pass unless you endure agonizing carving like Darrow.
It makes the caste system feel biological.
And that is the ultimate goal of all caste systems, to make the social hierarchy feel like an immutable law of nature. I am gold because my DNA says so. It brilliantly removes the political contestability of inequality.
If I'm red, I'm biologically built to mine. If I'm blue, I'm biologically built to calculate.
It's functional specialization taken to a dystopian, nightmarish extreme. It turns human beings into literal components of a machine.
Which brings us right back to the crisis in perception. The real crisis is seeing people as components.
Yes. The system demands you see components. Humanity demands you see people. You simply cannot do both at the same time.
But Darrow tries to do both. He tries to be the general, using components to win a war, and the liberator, freeing the people.
And that contradiction tears him apart psychologically. We see him weeping, stressing, breaking down. The cognitive dissonance of trying to be a warlord and a savior simultaneously is immense.
The Iron Rain monologue really captures that perfectly. He's in the pod, falling to the planet, knowing thousands of people will die simply because he said go.
And he has to wear the mask. He has to look exactly like a golden god while feeling entirely like a fraud inside.
The mask is such a recurring theme. Darrow constantly talks about hating mirrors.
Because the mirror shows him the lie. The structural insight here is that maintaining power requires a mask. Nero wears the mask of the lion. Octavia wears the mask of the mother sovereign. Pliny wears the mask of the humble servant.
And underneath, it's all just hungry people.
Desperately hungry for status, for survival, for absolute control. The system is just a machine for amplifying that hunger to a planetary scale.
So if we step back and look at the whole simulation of Golden Sun, what is the overarching lesson for a systems thinker?
The first lesson is that incentives eat culture for breakfast. The Golds have a very elaborate culture of honor and the compact, but the incentives are win and dominate. When those two clash, the incentives win every single time.
The Jackal proves that perfectly.
The Jackal proves it, the Sovereign proves it. The honor is just window dressing for brutality.
And the second lesson?
Closed systems decay. The society is a massive closed loop. It constantly recycles the exact same elites. It violently stifles any innovation from below, from the reds or blues. It wastes staggering amounts of human capital. Therefore, mathematically, it is doomed to entropy. It will rot from the inside or be broken from the outside.
And Darrow provides that outside force even though he's operating on the inside.
He is the fatal injection of entropy that the system simply cannot process.
And the third lesson?
Perception is power. The Sovereign rules entirely through fear. The figment. Darrow fights by changing perception. He shows the low colors they are actually strong, and he shows the golds they are actually vulnerable. The war is fought with razors and dreadnoughts, but it is entirely won in the mind.
Breaking the mind's manacles.
Precisely. You have to break the belief in the system before you can break the system itself.
This has been just an incredibly intense deep dive.
Systems analysis of tyranny usually is. It forces you to look at the ugly machinery.
It really makes you want to go out and check your own perception. What masks are we wearing in our institutions? What systems are we just blindly accepting as natural?
What lions are we believing in?
Exactly. We have to look closely at who benefits from the order we accept.
Hic sunt Leones is a warning map. But remember, maps can always be redrawn.
That's a really good place to leave it for today.
I agree.
Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly.
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.